Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, just like everyone else we talked to on Tuesday, I'm going to be going to the Cotton Bowl and actively participating in things, and then after that, well, we'll see.
Everything is still up in the air on our long-term future, but immediate future, we will be enjoying the Cotton Bowl because we hear the hospitality is fantastic for players and coaches, and also sometimes, most importantly, for reporters. And Tom, I will say, the hospitality at the Cotton Bowl, what little bit we got to experience. I always like to explain to people it was like our hospitality room was, imagine being able to go into any carryout and grab whatever you wanted and then walk out for free.
And also there's a Papa Shot there, yes, and like an air hockey table, yes. And it was quite a setup there. They take very good care of you. And yet every time we're there, it's always for a game that's like we're there for like 3 days instead of the normal 6-ish. So we're gonna have to work on that at some point in the future. But we'll take 3 days this year. That'll be fine.
It's fine. We'll get enough work done and everything else done in there that it'll feel like 6 days, 7 days. So on Tuesday, days are tough, Tom. On Tuesday, we talked with, 8 to 10 Buckeyes, and we're not going to go through all of them. Talking about, of course, this is their first opportunity to react to us regarding the Kyle McCord departure. We also got to talk to Devin Brown, which I thought was kudos to Ohio State for letting us to talk to Devin Brown, but we should have been able to talk to Devin Brown. He is your starting quarterback, so throw him out there now and have him deal with all of this stuff now. And a bunch of juniors that are currently opting in, but are still up in the air on what they're going to do after that. So we're going to run through all of this. But Tom, I first wanted to start with the reactions regarding Kyle McCord's departure because everybody was asked about this. And I'll start with Emeka Ibuka and Jack Sawyer, two of his best friends, talked about how they were obviously excited for him, happy for him, sucks that he has to leave, that sort of thing. Neither of them liked the way he was treated by the fans, but they also understood why he was leaving. They'll miss him. Devin Brown said it definitely caught him off guard. And I think that's what is kind of striking to me is just, maybe it shouldn't be, but having Donovan Jackson and Josh Frier both said they found out via Twitter that he was leaving. Tyleik Williams was asked about it. He said, yeah, Kyle told told some people a couple days before that he was leaving. And so, I went ahead and tweeted that out there, and a lot of people were upset that he didn't even let his offensive lineman know that he was leaving. And I don't know the best way to let players, let your teammates know that you're leaving other than to tell them. And he did tell them. I don't know if you have to tell everybody in a mass email, but I don't know. Are you supposed to tell your offensive lineman?
Well, this is kind of like the updated version of when the coach leaves to go take a new job, and does he, do the Bobby Petrino, like tack an email to the bulletin board in the locker room, like, well, bye, and gonna go ride my motorcycle to new school. That's generally considered not the way to do it. And Mike Elko, I think, for example, when he went from Duke to Texas A&M recently, held a team meeting and brought everyone together and said, here's what I'm doing and here's why I'm going, and, appreciate the time together. And I'm sure not everyone there was thrilled that he made that decision. So this is one of these things where I think there's not a way that you're going to do this that's going to make everyone happy. I don't know personally who Kyle McCord's closest friends on the team were, and do you have to tell the whole offense? Do you have to tell the whole offense? Do you have to tell the whole first team offense? Do you have to tell just the guys you're I don't know. I don't know that there is a particular decorum on this kind of stuff right now. You can write into Emily Post and find out, dear who is it, Heloise, like Dear Heloise or Dear Ann Landers, I'm entering the transfer portal. Do I need to send an engraved piece of stationery to each member of my offense or not? This, I don't know. Perhaps this is me being, a little bit, soulless on this, but I mean, there's lots of stuff you can get yourself worked up over, and if you'd like to get yourself worked up over this, like, fine, but
Well, and for all of the players that were like, I didn't know, even the ones that didn't know are still like very supportive and, that's my friend for life, that sort of thing. I did find some of Josh Frier's comments pretty interesting. And the quote here was, we were both there with him.
Mhm.
I found out through Twitter. Yeah, I was surprised too. I didn't know what to think of it. That's all I'm really going to say about it. And then he kind of went into how he doesn't really like this era of the transfer portal being so involved in college football. And he talked about the lack of patience that players have nowadays and how Josh Myers had a talk with him during COVID about don't leave. It's not going to be easy. Don't leave. And Josh Fryer talked about how like I didn't start until my fourth year.
Mhm.
And obviously the offensive line is different than everywhere else. And that's one of the things I said. I told him, yeah, you can talk to whoever you want about being patient, but offensive line is completely different than other positions. Will people listen to you? And he's like, yeah, probably not. But it is true that the lack of patience is not, I think it's pervasive. And I wrote about that a little bit on Tuesday, where with the quarterback dads, and not just the quarterback dads, but like every year you're not playing is a wasted year of investment or a wasted year of potential, future monies. And the inability for people to be patient any longer, or so many people to be impatient is, it'll be an interesting case study down the road as to, will people come back and say, I wish I had never gone anywhere.
I think you're going to have a lot of people who go in the portal and then later come to regret it. And I think you've got a lot of people who bounce around. I mean, like I look at JT Daniels, and he started at USC and then Georgia and then Pitt and then Rice. And he started as a 5-star quarterback and ended up at literally Rice, and then retired, I think, due to injury. I think it might have been a concussion thing with him, and announced his retirement. And you can bounce around, and sometimes, everyone looks at Joe Burrow and says, well, look, you can transfer and then you can be a Heisman winner. And Caleb Williams transferred and he was a Heisman winner. And, that's Michael Penix transferred and was a Heisman finalist. Bo Nix was transferred and was a Heisman finalist. Jaden Daniels transferred and was a Heisman winner. So you have these success stories, but I think there's a lot of guys. There's a lot of guys who transfer to and from Wisconsin, and it never seems to work out for anyone. Like, not for anyone. And I feel like there's a lot more Wisconsins out there than there are college football playoff teams. And, a lot of I was going to say a lot of people transfer to Florida, but I'm kind of thinking of some of the same people in that case. Yes. A lot of people transfer to Miami, Tony. How often does it work out? Almost never. There is, I think, I was obviously there when Josh Fryer was talking about all this stuff and felt myself kind of like nodding along, like, yeah, I think that you probably, in a lot of cases, you talked about it as quarterback dads, but I think when you are going through this as a player, and you're going through, from the time you're in, peewees, and then you go up and you go through, high school, you're going to all these football camps, you're going to all these, the private lessons and private trainers and all that kind of stuff. And all the quarterback dads and all the quarterback moms and all the quarterback coaches and all the quarterbacks all know all the same stuff that we do about multiple year starters in college and how beneficial that is for the NFL, and how the NFL teams know that too. And I think it's easy to look at it from the outside and go, you morons, what are you doing? You have to be patient. You have to, if you are, going into your third year or whatever as a quarterback, or your fourth year as a quarterback, and you have, Devin Brown, for example, going into next year, third year, 5-star prospect, coached by a former Ohio State quarterback. I mean, he's right at the top of the sport. If he's going into what would be his third season next year, which is potentially an NFL draft season, well, he would go into the NFL with 1 year of starting if he is the starter in 2023 and turns pro. Sorry, the starter in 2024 and turns pro for 2025. If you want to start for 2 years, okay, you've got to be the starter next year, and then you have to stay an extra year. But I think a lot of people go into college thinking, well, I'm going to be there for 3 years, and then I'm going to turn pro because that's whatever, and then I'm going to be a first-round draft pick because that's what Dwayne Haskins did. That's what Justin Fields did. That's what CJ Stroud did. So why wouldn't that be what I did? I also am a 5-star Ohio State quarterback. That's what everyone does. So I think it's easy to preach patience, and I do think ultimately probably you're better off being patient. But being patient means you might also, like Josh Myers told Josh Frier, stay there, because it wasn't just stay there and it's all going to work out. It's stay there and you're going to be set up for lifetime success by being a longtime Ohio State Buckeye, because not everyone on the Ohio State offensive line goes and plays in the NFL as long as Josh Myers has. Not every person who is a scholarship quarterback at Ohio State goes and plays in the NFL like CJ Stroud and Justin Fields and Joe Burrow and Dwayne Haskins and all the guys who've done that. So you have to sort of be willing to take the long view, and sometimes staying and taking the long view on something might mean, hey, maybe I'm not going to be shaking hands with Roger Goodell on the stage as a top 5 pick in the future. And that's, if that's been your dream your whole life, staying might be the smart thing, but that's a hard dream to maybe let go of. So I think you see people chasing that, and then maybe that, and that's true across the sport. This is not specific to any one person. This is true across the sport. There's a reason all these quarterbacks are in the portal. They're all chasing, I want to go be the next Joe Burrow. And, only one of them can be the first round, the first overall pick the next year. And a lot of times that's not even going to be a transfer guy.
And the irony in wanting to be the next Joe Burrow didn't leave Ohio State until he was heading into his 4th year. Like, in his 4th year is when he finally left and transferred somewhere to be a 4th-year redshirt junior. And, even sticking around and not starting for 3 years someplace at this point seems completely foreign. And it worked out just fine for Joe Burrow, but it has worked out for other guys. Bo Nix stayed for 3 years. Michael Penix stayed for 3 years as well at their respective schools. And I think both. I think
so.
And so, like, you can, and of course, Kyle McCord stayed for 3 years as well. So you stick around and you see if it works out, and then I guess you move on when it doesn't. I thought it was interesting talking to Xavier Johnson, who finished up his 6th year, and he was asked, obviously he didn't play. He played more than most walk-ons, most former walk-ons, and he definitely found his role at Ohio State. But if he had arrived at Ohio State, say, 3 years later than he did, if he was a 2021 guy instead of a 2018 guy, and the portal is as big as it is now, would he have stuck it out? And he said, I don't know if I would have. But he's now to the point where he is happy that he did, because it has made him who he is today. And that's, not just a football player, that's a person, a son, all of that, future father, husband, all of those things. And he credited that to, in part, sticking it out. But I don't know that, I don't know how many, we're not going to have many more 6th-year guys, obviously, for, the COVID reason, but there still were 6th-year guys without COVID, but that is soon going to be going away. I wonder how many 5th-year guys you'll have moving forward that just stay in one place. And it's probably going to be the offensive lineman, like a Josh Frier, is who your 5th-year guys are going to be. And maybe, who else other than, Cody Simonson, he's coming back, so like guys like that who have played a little bit, but then finally get to start as a a fourth and fifth year guy. And it's like, well, I haven't played enough to leave, and I'd really like to play one more year to show everything that I can do. But fifth year guys, all in one stop, it's going to be like when you used to get baseball cards and you'd see like, gosh, Ted Simmons played 22 seasons with the Brewers and nowhere else. I don't know if he did that or not, but like, it's just one team all the way down there. And wow, 5 years at one place. Holy cow.
Ted Simmons started his career with the Cardinals, just for you baseball heads out there.
Yes.
But yes, I think you can look at a bunch of different guys on this year's Ohio State team who are like that. Josh Proctor is like that, and sort of followed that same path. Where I mean, he's someone who, if he came today, I think he's probably in the portal after his second year, because he came in. You had the immediate hype around him. You had the immediate expectation around him, like this guy's going to be an immediate impact guy. And then you waited, and then you waited, and then you waited, and then you waited. And it was, sometimes injuries, and sometimes he got jumped on the depth chart. Yeah, if he had come in as a member of the class of 2021, he would have fit the absolute prototypical profile of a portal guy, and he stuck it out. And now he's was a starter on this year's team. And, we'll see what his NFL future is, but you would have to say it worked out reasonably well for him. And you'd be hard pressed to say that he would have been a lot better off transferring to whatever, Illinois or something. And, it would have gone so much better for him. You look at someone like Enoch Vermahis, who's been a depth guy on the offensive line and has seemingly been like next man up for 2 or 3 years running, and has gotten called on at times and has played, but has not been a consistent starter. He could come back next year for a 6th year, I believe. And, but those guys are the exception. And I do wonder, I don't mean to like kids today and draw like a big dark line between the recruiting class of like 2019 and 2021, but it does kind of feel like if you grew up in terms of being a college football player, and immediately the expectation was, the norm is everyone jumps in the portal. The guys who came in 2 years earlier than that, when that was not the norm, when that was sort of the exception, I wonder how that pattern is going to change in the coming years when, the old heads, Tony, as they like to say, leave campus, and it's just these dang kids with their baggy jeans and their transfer portal and their their loud music.
Their dang parachute pants. Kai Stokes is Josh Proctor. Came in with some hype and played well early on, and at least in practice, and you started to hear buzz about him. And then it doesn't happen after 2 years. So it's like, well, I guess I'm going to go look for it elsewhere. One guy who has stuck it out so far, Devin Brown, is going to be the starting quarterback for the Ohio State Buckeyes in the Cotton Bowl against a Missouri team that everybody is very excited to play, Tom, as we learned on Tuesday. So contrary to popular belief. But some of the things about Devin Brown, talking about how once Kyle McCord left, he reassumed this leadership position that he had done throughout camp, where he's being a leader. And then once you lose a job, then it's like, well, you kind of have to defer to the starting quarterback and you let him lead. But then, once Kyle goes, I think he said, well, things had to change. So, he became a leader again. He did say that he's always been preparing like he is a starter, that he's going to start games. So I don't think that will be any different now. He's just going to have more reps. Some of the things that we heard about him is that, as we all know, he's a playmaker. I don't think we got to see him really scramble as well as everybody says he does. I think maybe the called runs are predictable, so it doesn't necessarily put you on your best feet in terms of what you are as a playmaker. But I also heard players, including the defensive backs, say that his deep ball was really, really good. And Denzel Burke said that the first practice after Kyle announced his departure, Denzel Burke, quote, had a day. Or Devin Brown had a day. So things sound okay with the way things are going, but Devin Brown obviously super excited and spoke like it today.
Yeah, I think it's obviously a different role for him, where he was in a quarterback competition and really never seemed like he was the number one guy for any real long extended period of time, like the clear number one guy. There were points where you sort of heard, it's getting close. It's a real neck and neck battle. But McCord was seemingly ahead for long stretches of the spring and the summer. And then, obviously in the close of fall camp, you saw McCord kind of take a lead again over Brown. So he's never really been in that role before. And now all of a sudden, like, boom, you're sort of the unquestioned number one, at least for the Cotton Bowl. And I would assume that the competition would open back up in the spring for between him and Lincoln Kienholz and whoever else may be there on the roster at that point. But I'm intrigued to see what he can do, because we have seen him in sort of limited action during the season, and it was, you didn't see anything that just jumped off the field at you. He was fine at times, and it was okay, but it wasn't, you didn't have like a ton of wow moments there. And then he got hurt, and I would have been intrigued to see him in the goal line package more if he hadn't gotten hurt. But then he got hurt, so then you missed a bunch of time during the later portion of the season. So I am intrigued to see what that looks like with him, and with, it sounds like a substantially full complement of weapons to work with during the Cotton Bowl. We still have not heard officially from Travion Henderson or Marvin Harrison or Cade Stover, but you get Emeka Egbuka back. You're going to have Dallin Hayden. You're going to have probably at least some combination of the other guys. We just haven't heard anything definitive one way or the other. You're going to have a full complement of offensive line. I mean, you're set up to, like, great. Let's see it. Let's see what you got, because this is the first time he's really been, in that spot of being the guy at Ohio State. So, all right, let's see what you got.
One thing that Xavier Johnson said that I liked is that Devin Brown isn't trying to be anybody else. He's just being himself, and he is the excitable guy. He is the energetic guy, the guy that doesn't have to act like a leader type of thing. It's just, out there naturally, the confidence that you want your quarterbacks to have. I want to talk about the 2021 class and all of these guys that we spoke with on Tuesday. I think you and Kevin on the Wednesday morning Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning show talked about how all of these guys are opting in: Denzel Burke, Jordan Hancock, Jack Sawyer, Emeka Egbuka, Donovan Jackson, Tyleek Williams. So if you want to listen to Tom and Kevin talk about that, you can check that out, the Wednesday morning edition. But Denzel Burke said, I think everybody's playing, and we'll wait to hear more from Marvin Harrison. As of this taping right now, we have not heard. So if he makes an announcement before this show gets posted, then it is what it is. But from what we heard from all of these guys, they want to end this season on a positive note. And I'm putting together a story on that right now about the last memory. You don't want the last memory of this season to be the loss to Michigan. You want to end the season holding up a trophy. And so they say they're very motivated to play, but they're all still 50-50 on whether or not they're coming back, Tom. And I wonder, how much do you think the Michigan game will factor into these decisions? Because emotions eventually get weaned out of these financial, analytical decisions.
Well, I think you're going to have a certain amount of emotion in there with Michigan, and with not winning the Big Ten and not winning the national championship, and, kind of going over on their 3 big team goals the last 3 years. That's sort of the emotional portion of it. And you want to come, the Ohio kids want to come back, and, I'm sure Jack Sawyer talked about the fact that, Braxton Miller was his favorite Ohio State quarterback growing up. I'm sure Jack Sawyer spent a lot of time, dreaming of being an Ohio State Buckeye. And then, you would be crazy to give that up a year early. Well, now the reality of the situation is you're going to get your NFL draft grade, and the NFL is going to tell you, you're going to either make tens of millions of dollars or millions of dollars, or maybe go back to school. And I think you've got the emotion of the situation, like you said, you also have the realities of the modern college football world, where Michigan last year organized a very successful one more year campaign and brought back people like Blake Corum for another year. How does NIL factor into that? For someone like Lathan Ransom, for example, who's coming off an injury, we don't know if he's going to play in the Cotton Bowl. My guess would be no. They talked about him being able to come back for the college football playoff game potentially, but we don't know that yet. We don't know what his plans are. Does Lathan Ransom come back? If he's not going to be a first or second round pick, is he better off coming back and getting a decent amount of money in NIL and then putting together another year of film? And maybe you can move up and maybe you don't, but you're not, this is not a $0 or an NFL bag decision anymore. There's some middle ground in there. And, if you want to be cynical, then, taking the decision out a little ways, maybe as the deadline gets closer, the offer gets a little better. That's another potential piece of this. So, and I don't want to, discount the fact that there are I think there probably are pretty much all of them who look at the Michigan thing and the lack of a Big Ten championship thing as, the job isn't finished. And, you can leave without the job being finished, but I think as competitors, that's probably also something that is going to factor into that decision. It's not going to be the only piece of that decision, but I think it's going to be a piece of it.
And like Marvin Harrison said, if he does leave, it's something he's going to have to live with for the rest of his life, not getting that win over Michigan. And that entire 2021 class is in the same boat. Should somebody choose to leave early? I did like what Denzel Burke said. He got good feedback from the NFL, but he doesn't have a win over Michigan. And so it's like, I got good feedback. I don't have the win over Michigan. And now, those are two things that you have to weigh in this. I thought Tyleik Williams said, I think he got some good feedback, but he also wants to know he said there are other factors. And I think I asked, what those factors were. And he's like, who else is coming back? Like who else on the defensive line is coming back? And it really feels like this could be a domino thing. If, a couple of guys announce if JT Tuimoloau announces, then Jack Sawyer, then Tyleik Williams, it's like, and then, Denzel Burke, if those guys are coming back, does he want to come back? I do believe these are legitimately difficult decisions. And I think maybe that's why some of them are not even worried about it right now, because you can you'll get to that difficult decision. There's a time and a place for it. Right now, you want to beat Missouri and end the season the way it's supposed to be ended. And Jordan Hancock said, everyone wants to leave a legacy. And right now, that 2021 class, if you leave now, your legacy is that you never beat Michigan. And that's basically it. You never won a Big Ten championship. So I'm sure that's something that's on their mind. But again, the emotions eventually get weeded out, I think, in a lot of these decisions. Not always. Mike Doss, 22 years ago, opting to return for a senior season. But of course, he ended up being a second round pick. And so that's probably where he was going to be drafted anyway. So you're coming back because you're going to be a second round pick. Not the same as coming back because you're going to be a top 10 pick. So, but we'll see what they end up doing. Tom, one other question that we had from, I got a DM, somebody wanting to know, do we think the 12-team playoff next year will factor into their decision? Because it certainly opens up the odds and improves the odds of winning a national championship.
Well, and I think Ohio State's one of the schools that's most likely to benefit from a 12-team playoff, because Ohio State is, just skimming back in my head right now, when would the last time that Ohio State would not be part of a 12-team playoff? When would that have been? 2012, they weren't eligible. Mm-hmm. 2011, they had the whole post-Tatgate mess. But even going back before that, they're probably in, they're certainly in every year of the college football playoff era. And they're probably in many of the, 10 years before that. And Ohio State's one of those teams that once they're in, they have the talent to win it all. The old blue chip ratio idea that if, half of your talent or more is 4 and 5 stars, that's what you need to win a national championship. I don't think that's going to change in the new format. I don't think you're going to have a lot of, plucky underdogs. I don't think that the Mark D'Antonio Michigan State team would have fared any better having to win, 3 games as opposed to having to win 2. I don't think that would have worked out any better for them. So, if I'm weighing my decision and trying, winning a national championship is my goal, yeah, in some ways it's harder. It's harder for everyone because you got to win more games. But for a team like Ohio State or Georgia or Alabama, over the last 10 years, you're in virtually every year. And once you're in, you never know what can happen. I mean, Ohio State last year, everyone this time last year was saying, well, they're going to get killed by Georgia. They have no chance against Georgia. They were a field goal away from playing TCU for the national championship and almost undoubtedly winning that. And, you have the same level of talent at Ohio State that you do. That's a pretty consistent thing year to year. So I would think that the expansion to 12 teams would make it much more, I think that only improves Ohio State's chances of winning the national championship pretty much any year.
I'm just looking at their rankings year to year, and let's say they were eligible in 2012. I think the answer might be over the last 20 seasons. It would just be 2004 and 2011. Now, they might squeak in some of these other years. 2005, they finished ranked 4th. 2006, they finished ranked 2nd. 2007, they finished ranked 5th. But the year they were in the national championship game that year. 2008, they finished ranked 9th. So they were still in a BCS bowl game. That might have been good enough depending on all of the other factors. 2009, they finished ranked 5th. They were 8th going into the bowl situation. So maybe something there. 2010, they probably would have made it. They were ranked 6th and 5th in the final 2 polls. Then 11, they're not going to make it. The best ranking was 15. They stopped being ranked after the 3rd week of the season. So 2012, obviously, they would have. 2013, they were 7th after the Big Ten championship game that they lost, I believe. They still would have made it in because that was their only loss. Of course, 2014, 15, yes, 16, of course, 17, 18, 19, like it's 2011 over the last 20 seasons. And so, yeah, feels like the 12-team playoff is going to be beneficial, but how much of a factor in a decision? I think there are plenty of reasons to stay for the guys who are torn. And the reason to go is I'm ready to start my professional career, because you're going to get paid either way, but it's just depends on, what legacy do you want to leave? How badly do you want that Big Ten championship? How badly do you want to face Michigan? You get your senior day at home, these sorts of things. Like, I think there are a ton of benefits to returning, but the NFL is the dream. And so when you're, you're just one signature away from your dream, it's asking a lot for somebody to put that on hold.
Absolutely. And if you're a first round, let's start with, okay, if you're a top 5 draft pick, you should go. Like, sorry to the report that Marvin Harrison got a $20 to $25 million NIL offer. I don't think that is probably exactly accurate. The decimal point may have been in the wrong place there. The tip off for that is that Ryan Day, like a year ago, was hoping that he could get $13 million for his entire team to keep his entire roster together. That's your tip off that report is probably not accurate. So, Marvin Harrison, unless Marvin Harrison really, 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 really wants to come back, it is probably in Marvin Harrison's best long-term interest to go pro. If you're a first-round draft pick, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, they both opted out of the Rose Bowl and didn't, turn pro early in after 2021. Top half of the first-round picks, absolutely. If you're a first-round pick, a low first-round pick, and you're not going to materially, impact your, improve your draft stock, by all means, go. I think, and when you get into the, you're a 5th round pick, unless you're real tired of college, you can probably make as much or more in NIL by coming back, and you're probably still a 5th round pick next year. So how much are you hurting yourself? And then in the middle, it's just kind of family circumstance and all that kind of stuff. And again, some of those calculations have changed with NIL now being legal. And, the opportunities that are on the table, where it's not just, well, I'm going to have my, I'm going to have my tuition and my room and board and my $5,000 from the Alston case, and that'll be great. And, this is, the decimal point is moving a couple places over now for a lot of those guys. So I think you're at least seeing more guys. This was a surprise to me that all of those guys, there were several of those guys that I was not expecting to see in the Cotton Bowl. It was a surprise to me to see all of those guys decide to come back. And I think that might reflect a little bit some of the realities of, okay, now things are changing a little bit more, because this is not the first Ohio State team to lose to Michigan. And, Garrett Wilson still left after losing to Michigan in 2021. So the realities on the ground may have changed a little bit, given some of the changes in the sport.
And not that I think this will be a deciding factor, but a nice little bonus is if you do come back, you'll also have yourself in the college football video game, which is something that has not been a thing for a decade, and players have left the last decade wishing they could have been a part of it. Just a nice little side thing for them. Two last things for me. I think it's interesting that the juniors that we talked about how this game was also important because it would set get them off on the right foot for next year. Like, there were people who are, I'm 50-50 talking about this sets me up for next year. Like, they haven't left mentally. And I think you can go back to 2015 when half the team had left mentally by July, where this is my last year. I'm going out the way I want to go out. And then the last thing people were asking Xavier Johnson, with all of the departures at receiver and running back, like, hey, where are you going to be hanging out? And he said, well, the game planning starts on Wednesday, but I'm willing to do whatever, even kick. And then somebody asked, what's your range? I said, yeah, 10 yards and in. So I don't know that he's going to be a legit option there. He said he could punt though, but my thing is don't punt, and then see what happens. So that will do it for us. Please, if you're watching this on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. If you're listening to this on an audio platform that does ratings and reviews, please, we would appreciate a 5-star rating and or a review. And of course, you can always find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. If you're not, and I cannot stress this enough, if you're not yet a member, come join us, see what all the hubbub's about, bub. And of course, find Tom at the Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning podcast, find Kevin at the Big Me Kickoff podcast. If the X's and O's that we've got on the message board, the Huddle message board, second to none, and you can always find stuff there with Ross Fulton, Mickey Pettit, Devin Radcliffe, talking the aftermath of the Michigan game and what's to come. Tom, we should probably at some point do we're gonna have to watch some Missouri games, at least one. And
I was just thinking that, someone was talking about how Missouri, how good Missouri looked against Georgia. And I thought we need to find the Missouri-Georgia game and watch that like we did a bunch of Georgia games last year.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to do more than 2. Certainly, I think we did 5 Georgia games. We don't have the time for that. The game is almost here, but we will definitely get some Missouri watching in and react to those. So that will do it for today. I want to thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.